Picture this: the hypostyle hall at Karnak Temple at dusk. 134 colossal sandstone columns, towering in 12 massive rows. The sheer crushing weight of all that stone just hangs in the air above you. A single shaft of late golden light cuts diagonally through the heavy, dry cave dust. You can literally almost smell the ancient grit. Every single surface is completely covered in hieroglyphs and towering figures. I'm MJ, and this explainer unpacks a world built and rebuilt over 1,500 years. Hawks, ibises, lions, jackals, they all just stare back at you in absolute silence.
I'm AJ, and wow, just looking at this sheer scale, it feels like standing at the absolute bottom of an ocean. It's a whole towering forest of gods just waiting in the dark.
It really is a massive, tangled forest. By the end of the New Kingdom, there were over 1,500 named gods operating inside this system. Think about the Greeks or the Romans for a second. They had a neat, perfectly manageable dozen sitting on Mount Olympus. But Egypt? Egypt had thousands. It was an absolute administrative and theological labyrinth spanning an entire civilization.
Okay, so if we step back and look at this massive, chaotic structure, the obvious question hits you hard. How did this not just fall apart? Why are there so many of them? And seriously, why on earth do they have animal heads?
That single question unlocks the entire culture. Egyptian gods are not a pantheon. They are a 4,500-year-old visual language. This whole thing is an enormous family fight where every single animal head is a literal job description. Seeing a jackal isn't just looking at a dog. It's reading a specific, crucial instruction manual for the afterlife. Once you read this code, the entire history of Western religion actually starts speaking back to you.
Right! But you can't just spawn 1,000 deities out of thin air. If it's all one massive family system, where does a tree that impossibly big actually start? A kingdom definitely needs a foundation before it becomes a sprawling bureaucracy of gods.
It starts with one single figure, Atum. He's the self-created god. He stands on a primordial mound called the Benben. He rises right out of the endless dark waters of chaos at the exact second before time begins. He literally expels the universe from his own body. From that single solitary act of creation came air and moisture. And then those two primal forces created the solid earth and the vast sky.
So, that tight group of elements becomes the Ennead, the original 9 gods. They intermarry, and they shape the early world. But from that tiny nucleus, the family absolutely explodes. Every local village had its own patron spirit. Over centuries, those local spirits get folded into the main family tree. It expands into a massive system of over 1,000 named figures. It becomes the undisputed spine of Egyptian theology.
Okay, the family tree part makes total logical sense. Kingdoms grow, but splicing human bodies with bird and cat heads is entirely bizarre. Where does all that biology actually come from?
The animal carries the exact function of the god. It is highly specific. Take Ra. He is the hawk-headed sun god. He traverses the sky in his solar bark. And every single night, he journeys into the underworld to fight Apep, the cosmic serpent. The stakes are absolute darkness. If Ra loses that fight, the sun literally does not rise tomorrow.
Then look at Anubis. He wears the head of a jackal. But why? Well, because early Egyptians observed real scavenger dogs digging in their shallow graveyards. It was a terrifying reality. They watched desert dogs rip up their own ancestors. So, they deployed a brilliant psychological coping mechanism. They turned the stark reality of the scavenger into protective theology. They made the ultimate grave robber the ultimate guardian of the dead. Literal observation became divine law. Next up, Horus is the falcon. He's the master of the sky and the ultimate symbol of kingship. Think about how a falcon actually hunts. It stoops from the clouds at 100 miles an hour with absolute, deadly precision. Falcons own the sky with speed and mastery, and every pharaoh for 3,000 years was considered a living incarnation of that exact predator precision, sitting right there on the human throne.
Then we have Thoth. He has the head of an ibis. Ibises walk super slowly in the mud. They look closely at the ground. They patiently observe everything. Thoth is the god of writing and time. He invented hieroglyphs and writes the laws of reality. Centuries later, the Greeks saw this absolute cosmic wisdom. They respected this ibis god so much, they merged him with their own god Hermes. They called him Hermes Trismegistus. Because of that specific merger, the entire foundation of Western occult thought gets named after him.
And Bastet wears the head of a cat. She is the fiercely powerful goddess of home and women. Cats caught mice in the grain stores. That was the literal difference between a family surviving or starving.
Bastet represents the warmth of the hearth, sure, but also the razor-sharp claws defending it. Cats were intensely sacred. Killing one was a massive crime, punishable by immediate death. The Greek historian Herodotus recorded something startling about this absolute devotion. He wrote, Egyptians would rescue cats from burning buildings before children.
Wait, before their own children? That absolutely cannot be real.
That is the exact line he recorded. True or not, it proves a major structural point. This theology was built for a non-literate society. You don't need to read a sacred book if you live completely inside your religion. The physical animal walking right through your house is the living, breathing icon of the god.
But a structure of 1,500 competing gods sounds completely unstable. We're talking about competing priesthoods, endless temples, and massive political power. Why didn't a system that heavy and complicated just collapse under its own weight into endless civil wars?
Because they did something totally unprecedented in the ancient world. They merged them. The priests at Thebes realized they didn't need to fight a bloody civil war over supremacy. They took Amun, the invisible wind god of the south. They took Ra, the blazing sun god of the north, and they literally hyphenated them. They created Amun-Ra, crisis averted, war cancelled. He became the most worshipped god in human history. He received 2,000 years of continuous, unbroken devotion. The pantheon was a living, breathing organism. It adapted. Isis simply absorbs the cow goddess Hathor. And when Alexander the Great marches in and conquers Egypt, he doesn't destroy the temples. He treks out into the desert and gets crowned the son of Amun. The Egyptians don't panic, they just absorb Alexander. They slot the Greek and Roman gods right in alongside their own.
That flexibility is just staggering. They essentially future-proofed their entire religion.
Exactly. That radical adaptability is why it outlived the total collapse of the Bronze Age. It survived the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. They worshipped these gods at the Temple of Philae right up until the Emperor Justinian forcibly bolted the doors shut in the year 537.
Justinian shut the stone temples for good, but the visual language did not die there. It had already migrated. It jumped directly into our subconscious architecture. Carl Jung built his famous psychological archetypes using these exact same structures: the self, the shadow, the anima.
Jung believed all humans share a hidden basement of memories called the collective unconscious, and he explicitly based his universal old wise man archetype directly on Thoth. He pulled heavily from Egyptian theology to map out the depths of the modern mind. Our modern psychology owes a massive, completely unacknowledged debt to the Nile.
It goes even further into the modern world. Take the Eye of Horus. It traveled from Egyptian priests to Roman Egypt. Then it moved to Renaissance scholars. Then it was adopted by Hermetic Freemasonry.
Wow, it really makes you realize we haven't changed that much. We are still walking around with this 4,000-year-old magic right in our pockets, completely unaware of the weight it carries. It sits right there on the back of the United States $1 bill.
So, let's pull this massive timeline together. We start with one vast family tree sprouting from the dark water. We get animal heads functioning as brilliant literal job descriptions. We see the absolute political genius of merging competing gods together to prevent civil wars. And through that flexibility, this structure seeded the deepest concepts of divine judgment and the soul's journey. Those exact concepts eventually filtered right into the bedrock of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
The pantheon is not just a messy list of names and weird animal heads. It's a brilliant, lasting code. Once you finally learn to read this visual language, the silent stones open up. The whole history of Western religion speaks back to you. Next time on This Explainer, the most consequential story Egypt ever told. A god murdered by his own brother?
And the wife who relentlessly searched the earth to put his body back together.
It's the original story of bodily resurrection. It laid the exact theological groundwork for Christianity 2 millennia later.